It's another edition of the Clearing the Crease podcast powered by BODOG.EU. We've got a fun show lined up. It's the holiday season. Of course, we're going to be festive. We got lots of good times. He is the Stanley Cup winner, former Lightning great Mike Commodore, freshly back from Mexico. We want all the gory details, Commie.
Yeah, I don't know how many. I think the only thing gory that I did was the amount of tequila I drank. And a decent amount of double bogeys, I would say.
Yeah. They go hand in hand, don't they? They go hand in hand. Once you get to a certain level, it's...
Yeah. I had a little bit of actually, there was an edible moment, too, in one evening. But, yeah, JR gave me half of an edible, and I thought he said, like, it's going to be 15. I'll keep this short. It was 50. But it was actually the best thing that happened because I slept for like 12 hours. Didn't go to dinner, nothing. I was done.
Best sleep in a while.
Oh,
can you play buckled? Like, can you play well buckled?
Not buckled. Good buzz, yeah. Buckled, yeah. No edible though. I never do that on there. I don't. That would be a catastrophe. I feel like that would. I've never tried.
Maybe don't go 50.
Well, yeah.
You know, like follow more of a 2.
Anyways?
A 2.5 is very civil. Talk to the middle-aged guy over here.
More. I was on the moon there for a few hours.
Balance.
Mm-hmm.
Also, along for the ride, as always, he is the former NHL Rookie of the Year and former Dallas Stars legend, Andrew Raycroft. How you doing, Razor? You got your holiday shopping done yet?
There's some presents under the tree. I did go out and get the one thing I needed to get yesterday for a couple of my kids. So I think that's the extent. Everything else is taken care of by my better half.
All right, look at that. Happy wife, happy life, and without her, you're
terrible, shitty credit card bill. Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Well, we spend the next 3 months trying to pay this all off. Hey, listen, we got a fun one lined up for you. The NHL season's cooking. The action is red hot. Make a play with game odds, all the props you need to make hockey exciting every single night with BODOG.EU. You can pick goal scorers, check out the latest Stanley Cup winner odds, all of it. BODOG's got you covered. That'll keep you locked in for every single shift all season long. Make a play, score big with BODOG. And don't forget, new players can take advantage of the BODOG bonus. Use the code CREASE400 when you sign up. Be sure to tell a friend as well. Hey, look, Olympic buzz. We're talking about the cap going up. Does this mean William Nylander stays in Toronto? Of course, that's what every Leaf fan wants to know. We got all that and an absolute beaut of a guest joining us. He has 17 seasons in the National Hockey League. He was traded for Alexander McGillney. He's played with Ovechkin. He was part of the West Coast Express line in Vancouver that was just buzzing in the early 2000s with the Canucks. We're talking to Brendan Morrison. It's all coming up, so buckle up as we drop the puck on this holiday edition of Clearing the Crease. And our special guest this week, you know, you look at the stops he's had in the National Hockey League, but in the early 2000s, there was no more of an exciting line in hockey than the Vancouver Canucks West Coast Express. And this week, we have the most important member of that line. And I say that because, well, he was the only one willing to pass the puck. Brendan Morrison joining us. How are you doing, Mo?
I'm good, Seaball. I'm great. I tell those guys I was the engine on that line, and my back's still sore from carrying them. But they don't believe it, bud. They don't believe it.
Nobody's buying it, right?
No one's buying it.
Mo, I want to go back a few more years here. We were texting a little bit. Speaking of carrying people, I think you were borderline carrying a whole program. But I want to go back to the beginning because the start of our career was kind of, and when I say the same, like three similar stops. Now it was obviously very different. You had more points in a weekend than I had in a year. But you played in Penticton, lit it up, obviously, drafted by New Jersey, and then went to Michigan. How'd you end up in Michigan? Was there ever any like WHL? I'm sure there was interest, but was that ever a question for you?
Yeah, so back when I was playing in Penticton, there still wasn't a draft in the WHL. So each team, they had a protection list, so they could protect 50 players. So, you know, I was 16 years old. I went down to the mailbox one day and I had a letter in there from the Portland Winterhawks. And it just said, hey, congratulations, you've been added to our 50-player protected list. And that's how it went. There wasn't a draft. So I was protected by Portland. So the year I went to Penticton as a 17-year-old, I had in my mind that I think I wanted to go to college. I was, not that I'm a big guy today, but I was even smaller back in junior hockey, and I was 150 pounds, and I felt I needed some time to get stronger and mature. But Portland had a full court press. I remember multiple times they would come to games and they would wait for me afterwards, and the coaching staff would be there, and sometimes the owner would be there in the parking lot trying to get me to sign.
That's
and
a good city too, Mo. Like, come on,
yeah,
like Portland, right?
And they had great teams there. Like at that time, like Lonnie Bojanos probably would have been their big guy there. Weems was there, Jason Weimer. Yeah. They were actually trying to recruit and sign Landon Wilson as well. Yeah. And anyways, they had a good team, and and to this day, Weems always says I ruined his chance of winning the Memorial Cup because we never went there. So I hear about that. But anyways, didn't go the junior route. Ended up going to Michigan. It was just a great fit for me. My mom and dad actually grew up in Windsor, Ontario, which is 40 minutes from Ann Arbor, and I went down on my visit, and that weekend just absolutely blew me away. Coming from a smaller town in BC, I went back, saw 2 hockey games. I went and actually saw the Fab Five play. They were all freshmen the year I was getting recruited. So I go into Chrysler, and there's 15,000 people in there, and they got me like 3 rows behind the bench. And it's like, and I remember vividly, they played Notre Dame. It was like alley-oop. This place is rocking. I'm like, this is where I want to be. Like, this is pretty sweet. So yeah, it was
sorry,
cool.
Portland.
Yeah, sorry, Portland.
Oh my God. Suck it, 28-hour bus rides.
Yeah.
And honestly, from a pop culture standpoint, like, you're talking about maybe the most iconic group of college players in basketball history, right? Jimmy King, Ray Jackson, Jalen Rose, Juwan Howard, Chris Webber, and they put you on the 3rd row right there, right? Yeah. That's how you do it. That's how you sell somebody going to the college experience.
That's how you make a statement right there. So it was, it was cool, man. Like I'd never been to anything like that, growing up on the West Coast and just in Canada in general. I mean, there's such a discrepancy between, the youth sports now and college sports in the US, right? I mean, it's unfortunate that there isn't a little bit more investment in the sports in Canada, because I do think there's some good product there. But when you come down to the US and you experience a football game, you go into hockey, I mean, basketball, it's like pro sports, right? But even more passion.
In case you guys didn't know, I needed a calculator this morning because I was adding up some numbers. So in Mo's Michigan career, the win-loss record was 132 wins, 26 losses, and I think 7 ties. Most numbers were 155 games played, 4 full years, 102 goals, and 182 assists for 284 points. I have a couple questions. A, did you guys go to the Frozen Four every year? And B, is there a statue of you outside Yost Arena? If not, there should be. This is a joke.
Well, I was fortunate to play with some great players and good teams. My freshman year, we didn't go to the Final Four. We actually ended up losing to Lake Superior State in the quarterfinals to go to the Frozen Four, and we had beaten Lake State 5 times that year, and we ended up losing that game in overtime 6-5. So didn't go my freshman year, but went my sophomore, junior, senior year. My sophomore year, we played Maine in the semifinals, went into triple overtime, and we lost. I hit the post in the first overtime, and anyway, so we lost in the semis. My junior year was probably, out of my 4 years, probably the weakest team I played on, but we peaked at the right time. We went on a heater at the end of the year. We won 11 straight games, and BU that year was kind of the favorite. And another team in the semis was Vermont, who had Martin St. Louis and Tim Thomas. And so we beat BU, probably played our best game of the year in the semis, beat them 4-0. And then we played Colorado College, knocked off Vermont, and we beat Colorado College in overtime to win the national championship.
Hey, who scored that overtime goal? I wouldn't mind hearing about that one.
Yeah, no, I managed to squeak one by the goalie on a rebound there. So yeah, it was just went to the net, beat my guy off the wall, had a wide open net. It seemed to take forever to go in the back of the net, but it did, and we won that. So that was pretty cool in '96. And then my senior year, we had we had a wagon of a team. Like, we lost 3 games the whole year. We never lost at home, and we were heavily favored. We were ranked number 1 the whole season, and we got upset by BU in the semis 3-2. And so that one was a tough one to swallow. But those single game elimination games, they're tough, man, and anything can happen. And again, we played on great teams. We had multiple guys that went on to have NHL careers. Marty Turco was our goaltender for 3 years. Steve Shields was my freshman year. So both guys that went on to pro careers. John Madden, Mike Knubel was my line mate the first 2 years. David Oliver early on, Brian Wiseman, Jason Botterill, Blake Sloan, Warren Looning, Stephen Halko. I think I played with, over 4 years, I think 14 or 15 guys that went on to have play some games in the NHL.
Did you ever have an opportunity? I know, I was drafted by New Jersey as well, and we were lucky enough to win my 3rd year as well. And then I ended up leaving. You stayed for your senior year. Did you have an opportunity with Lou to leave early? And did he do did you have to tell him, or was it, how did that work? I don't know how it worked with me.
Well, you know how it is with Lou. I got another great Lou story about my pro career there, but he was pretty good with me, man. Like, he basically said, listen, this is your decision. We'll support you either way. So I didn't really get the full court press from them, but fast forward a year after I went back to my senior year and then I ended up signing my deal. He said, we really wanted you to leave after your junior year, but he never really said that to me. So he just left the ball in my court, which I respected and appreciated.
Well, he was a college guy too, right? And I'm sure there's probably at least an understanding as much as we all look at Lou as being the evil overlord. I think there's probably, because of that NCAA background, I'm sure there's probably a respect factor there, or at least understanding from that student athlete standpoint.
Yeah, for sure. He was at Providence there for a while, and I think he was supposed to be a phenomenal baseball player. I think he was a catcher, and then I think he was the AD at Providence and kind of mentored Burkey there for a bit, Brian Burke. But Lou's he's the Godfather, right? I mean, he is intimidating. That's one way to put it, but very businesslike. And I think over time, as time goes on, you appreciate how professional he was, and I learned a lot on how to be a good pro under his tutelage.
Well, then take us to your first NHL experience. You're the big man on campus. You're hanging out with the Fab Five. You're hanging out with Marty Turco. Winning every game, and now you go to New Jersey, which is another, at that time, amazing organization.
Yeah, a great team. I mean, you walk in the locker room. I remember my first training camp, and the Hall of Famers, obviously in net, Marty Brodeur, Scotty Stevens, you got Dave Andrechuk, Scott Niedermeyer, legends like Kenny Danico, Lyle Odeline. Sikora, Elias, Arnott. We were loaded. Bobby Holik, and I remember, my first contract. I ended up signing it like the night before training camp, and it was my agent and I, Kurt Overhart, in with Lou in the room and up on the whiteboard, and he's putting up numbers and this and that. And for me, at the time in college, it was almost like if you were not drafted, you had all the leverage in the world. So I remember my senior year when we knocked out Bowling Green. Mike Johnson was there, and he ended up signing a contract with the Leafs and his signing bonus was $800,000. And Randy Robitaille was at Miami of Ohio, and he signed with Boston. I think he signed for $575 or $600. So in my mind, I'm thinking, well, I know, or I believe I'm as good as these guys.
You are.
I'm a million. That's what you were thinking.
Yeah, and I think my what has happened in the past, I've proven that. So I'm going into this thinking I'm going to sign this big ticket. It was grind, and ended up signing for $500, which at the time on a 2-year deal, I think was the biggest signing bonus Lou had ever given out on an average, right? Like, so we grinded that out, get to training camp, go into camp, and just, you guys know what it's like. You walk in there and it's kind of that off factor, guys that you've been watching on TV your whole life. And now it's like, okay, now you're competing for a job. And this is,
and Mo, that's a heavy team. Like the names you rattle off, like Like, you know, obviously there's some skill there, but man, that's a group of heavies, right?
Abby, I forgot Dougie Gilmore was still there too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
So I mean, it was crazy. So you go into this camp, and now this is guys' livelihoods, right? They got kids, they got families, they got mouths to feed. So it was an eye opener. But I felt good my first camp. I played, all the exhibition games, and then Lou sent me down the last day of camp and said, "We're going to get you into Albany." That was his good line. "We're going to get you here," like just kind of eases it. "We're going to get you here." Oh, thank you.
We're gonna
Thank
find
you.
a way to get you into play the A.
Exactly. But as a young guy, you're a little impatient, and you believe you can step in right away and contribute. But I spent most of my first year in Albany in the A, and it was good for me in the long run. I learned a lot. I played in a bunch of key roles there. We had a good team down there, and then
Who was
made the
coach there,
jump.
Mo?
Robbie, no, not sorry, it was John Canuck. John Canuck and Red Gendron was the assistant. Love Cunny. Like he was
Our careers are
he
like
was as
exactly the
hardcore
same.
of a Southie
Yeah.
Boston as you could be. Like, man, he would come in there, like he would get fired up. He would get so fired up. And I remember one day he was so mad at us after the first period. He came into the locker room and he punched the whiteboard, but it was a concrete wall behind the whiteboard. And you could see him just grimacing, right? He's shaking his hand, but he would not give us the satisfaction that he had broke his hand. So he actually broke his hand, but he comes to practice the next day, no cast on, nothing, right? He's tough as nails. And you're doing the old 500, you're doing laps around the rink, and guys are like, and we heard from our trainer, Cunny's got a broken hand. So guys are like, "Watch this, I'm just gonna fucking zip a puck at Cunny here." So across ice, and he'd take the pass and just bite his lip. So it was like he was a tough guy, man. Oh, and I loved him as a coach. He was great.
Mo, I was messaging with John Madden, whom you ended up playing with, including Michigan, like your first 7 or 8 years pro. He
Yeah.
was saying, so I was asking him, does anything stand out? He said, ask him about, I don't know if it was, do you guys get sent down at the same time? I
We
think
were, yeah,
ish or something like that. Something about it, like your first AHL game, or maybe like you didn't play in any preseason AHL, did you?
No, I didn't. I think. Well, he might be talking about. Is he talking about Rob Skurlak in our
He's
first
talking
game?
about, he said something about you guys were sitting beside each other on the bench, and there was 7 fights before you guys got on the ice.
Dude, this is the best part of it. We're in our locker room. We come off the ice. We're playing Philadelphia, and I'm actually living with Rob Skurlak, who was played in Kamloops and was like 6'5", 250, and had like 6% body fat. I mean, he looked like the Hulk. And obviously he was there to fill a role, right? He wasn't putting pucks in the net. He was filling guys' faces.
A classic prospect in the 90s, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah, man.
6'5".
Oh, yeah. So we come in after warm up, and Johnny and I, Mads and I, are sitting beside each other. We got a tiny little 13-inch TV in our locker room, and we're looking up there, and we had heard that Philly had a guy, Frankie the Animal, by Lois. Yeah, I'm like, this guy's nickname is the Animal. Jesus, this is a slap shot. Then he's got the long hair, and apparently he has mafia ties in Philly and all this stuff. So anyways, they're like, the Animal likes to be the last guy off the ice, and he likes to shoot a puck into the opposite net. So Skurly finds this out. He's a rookie. He's like, "I'm not letting him do it. I'm not getting off the ice." I'm like, okay. So everybody's in the locker room, and these two guys are on the ice still. Next thing you know, they go to center ice to square off, gloves come off. And they're just in warm-up, end of warm-up. There's no referees out there. There's nothing. And all you see on the TV is John Cunniff, our coach, and Bill Barber is their coach, in their suits and dress shoes, running on the ice, trying to break this fight up. And I'm just like, oh my God, dude, we're in a different world here.
It is slap shot.
Yeah.
Oh, that's crazy.
Crazy.
What's the last one? Then we'll move on. The last one for me on the Devils. What's what I'm always curious about? I mean, it's crazy how much I lived below Skurlak my first year. It's crazy how many similarities. Colin White just called me. You played
Whitey.
with, Whitey's an animal too. Yeah, I have a few loose stories as well, but you said you had one, so I'm interested. I'm always interested to hear it because I didn't at the time. I was the same way. Well, I'll just speak for myself. Lou, to me, when I first met him, I was like, man, this guy does some weird things. Like, I didn't really get it, but as time went on, and like I respected him, but I really appreciated as time went on my time there. So any Lou story, I'm always interested in hearing.
Well, I agree with you. Over time, you appreciate it. it was always the big joke. There's multiple Lou's, right? Like you walk in the front door of practice, he's standing there. You go back as far away as possible, and you're taping your stick, and he comes in that door. Like your head's always on a swivel. Like at our practice rink there, they had the one-way tinted glass. And every single practice, you would just see a silhouette of a guy standing there, like a shadow of a man, and you knew it was him. He watched everything. So I signed my first deal out of college. It was a 2-year deal, and again, I had a pretty decent rookie year, put up like 46 points, and we talked when the season ended, and he said, "Listen, we'll take care of this deal. We'll be fair with you, and we'll get it done here a little bit later in the summer." I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." Well, now we're getting into August. Nothing's happened, and he comes, and then he fires the qualifier out when he had to send that out. I think it was August 1st. So my agent goes back to him and said, "Okay, are we going to start negotiating the contract now?" He's like, "What do you mean negotiate the contract?" He's like, This is the offer." Like, he's like, "Well, you told us you're going to be fair, and he's like, this is all I'm going to do because this is all I have to do." And that was it. That was the deal. So I'm like, I'm not signing it. I'm going to wait him out. So I said, "Can I come to camp without a deal?" No player comes to camp without a deal. So I'm like, okay. And Patrick Eliash was in a similar situation. So he's like, "I'm going home to the Czech Republic to go play there." He said, "Why don't you come with me?" I'm like, "Well, I want to play. I don't want to sit around." So I hop on a plane, and like the day before we go, I look, my passport's expired. I'm like, "Oh my God." Jesus. So and Patrick knew the airlines. They're like, "Listen, get on the plane when you get there. Like, what we'll do is we know people there. Like, you won't even actually walk off on the sky thing. You're just going to go right off the side of the plane onto the tarmac. We'll have a car there. But there could be a problem. You might have to come right back home." Look, I'm going to go because I want to play. So that all works out. So I end up getting a new passport in the Czech Republic. And now Patty we're playing for 2 teams. So he's from a small hometown, which is Division 3, which is honestly like glorified men's hockey. And then we played in Pardubice, which is in their top division where Hasek is from. And it was great. It was there for a month and had an awesome time. Nobody spoke English at all. Like Patty was the only guy who spoke English, but good group of guys. So now at that time in the NHL, if you weren't back by, I believe it was like October 10th or 15th, if the team signed you, you had to clear waivers. So Lou said, "If you guys aren't back, I'm not signing you. You're going to sit out the whole year, because if I sign you after that date, we're going to lose you because of waivers."
So pick you up.
So I'm like, there's nothing I can do. I got to sign this deal. So now I'm thinking, well, maybe I want to get out of New Jersey. Like, I feel like, I would play on the top power play unit, but I would play on the 4th line with like Sasha Lakovic and Christoph Oliwald. They were my line mates. But I would play on, but I would play on the top power play unit. So it was this total weird situation. But I knew we had a good team. I knew we were deep. But I'm like, again, I see other guys in the league that I played against that were getting more opportunities. So I'm like, I'm going to tell them I want to trade. So I go, "Oh yeah, man, this is the nervous I've been in my life. So I go in to sign my contract, and now he's like, I get in there, "Brendan, I've always liked you. You've always been one of my favorite guys, but you're getting bad advice from your agent. Like he's steering you the wrong way. Like, we're family in here. Let's put this behind us. Like, let's move forward." And in my mind, I still got to tell him that I want to trade after, and he's patting me on the back, and I'm like, "Oh my God." So I'm like, kind of like mumbling under my breath, like, "Mr. Lamoriello, like, I don't think that you were honest with me in the whole negotiation process." And he's looking at me, and I could see like steam kind of coming out of his ears. And I'm like, if you have an opportunity to trade me, I would like you to trade me." And he lost it. Like, dude, I crawled out of that room. Like, I've never been so uncomfortable in my life. Like, he put,
he's intimidating.
Oh yeah. So
he lights you up.
Oh, this lit me up, man. So I crawled out of there, and now I'm like, what am I going to do? So, played, and I was kind of rattled, didn't have a great start to the season, then started to play well. So I went back in at Christmas time, and I was in and out of the lineup a little bit. Like Robbie Fatorik was coaching. He scratched me a couple of times. Like, there'd be games where I felt I played well and had, and I know points aren't everything, but for me, it was a big thing early on. And I'd put up and then I'd be scratched. So I was kind of, what's going on here? So I went back in at Christmas time and I sat down across the desk from him and I said, Mr. Lamorello, my stance hasn't changed. If you have an opportunity to move you, I would appreciate it. He's like, move you? He's like, there has to be another team in this league that wants you. So I crawled over the office again, like, oh my God, man, this is terrible. So I go back in one more time, and I had a really good stretch of 10 games playing, and then he was a little bit more. I'm not going to say accepting of what I was saying to him, but wasn't as
standoffish
towards me. Yeah. So, anyways, I ended up getting dealt on the deadline, and I was actually out for lunch in New York. And my brother-in-law is Daryl Razor from the Stars, the Dallas Stars. He's been color commentating down there for 25 years.
Yeah.
And cell phones were just kind of coming in at that time. This was in the year 2000. So he was on a radio station out of Toronto, and he was about to hang up the phone. He was giving his opinion on trades. You're like, hold on, something's coming across the wire right now. And they're like, yeah, Vancouver just traded Mogilny to the Devils for Morrison and Peterson. He's like, really? He's like, well, I'll let him know I'm having lunch with him. So he hangs up. He's like, you just got traded. I'm like, no way. There's no way. And this was like at 2:45 Eastern time. So the deadline passes. I have a couple buddies call me from Vancouver. They're like, man, it's on, like, we just saw it, like the deals happened. I'm like, I haven't heard anything from Jersey. So an hour after 4:00, I pull into my driveway back in Jersey, and it was Lou's secretary, Marie. And she said, Lou would like to talk to you. So he actually said, hey, can you come down to the rink? I want to see you. So I went down to the rink and I saw him, and we had a good chat. He's like, listen, I didn't want to do this, but, I think it's going to be a good move for you. I think it's a good move for our team. And at the end of the day, I just think you got bad advice, but, it is what it is. Yeah. Yeah. So, but, like he was like, you went through a comedy, super professional, right? I mean, couldn't have long hair. I mean, shirts and ties everywhere. And at the time you're like, man, this is a bit much, but man, you learn how to be a pro, and you learn how to treat people. And it was good. Very good.
So I want to parlay that, like, you had a phenomenal run in Vancouver, right? And you playing alongside Marcus Naslund, Todd Bertuzzi. I mean, the energy comes back into that city, which had been doom and gloom for 5 years prior, and you start selling out the building for years and years. But before we kind of dive into the positives, you go from Lou Lamorello to Lou's disciple.
Yeah, his protege
with Burke, right? And so Brian Burke, but can you share your arbitration story?
Oh yeah.
I haven't heard this.
We haven't heard it. Oh, this is
no, I don't think so.
This is fabulous. So the arbitration process. So I had 2 pretty good years in Van, and then kind of, again, I don't know what's my issue. I kind of agree on a deal. So just to kind of safeguard what's going to happen, and to have I'm going to 100% have a deal in place, I filed for arbitration. So I remember flying back to Toronto with my agent and Burke and Nonis, and the last conversation was, this is our last offer. And if he doesn't sign it, if he gets one more penny than this in arbitration, we're gonna trade him. I'm like, okay, fine. We're going. So we get in there, and it's a very odd process, man. Like, you're literally at a desk, and you have the arbitrator at the end, and then there's myself, my agent. We have a representative from the PA, and they have Burke, Nonis, and a representative from the NHL. And you're like, you could like reach and shake hands. Like, that's how intimate it is in this whole thing. So they go in, they present their case. You have a chance to offer a rebuttal. You kind of leave the room, take a break. You come back in, you have your closing statement. You get to say your closing statement, and they say their closing statement. So anyways, it's man, there's a bunch of times in that thing I just had to put my head down and like literally bite my cheek. It's like, that year, like I played in special teams, like power play, penalty kill, played a ton, took face-offs, and they'd be like, well, the only reason he kills penalties is because we don't have anybody else we can put out there. Like things like that. Like, I'm kidding you. I'm like,
penalties.
I'm like, okay. So then it gets in this whole thing. Their arbitrator was their lawyer was a French guy, and he's like, the situation with Morrison, Bertuzzi, and Naslund reminds me of a story, The Elephant and the Mouse. And I'm like, is this real life right now? Like, is this happening right now? He's like, the elephant and the mouse, they're in the jungle, and they come across this raging river with a bridge over top, but the bridge is broken, and they can't get across the river. And the mouse says to the elephant, "What are we going to do?" And the elephant says, "It's okay, mouse. You just climb on my back, and I will take you to the other side." So he says, the elephant, he gets in the river and he walks across with the mouse on his back, and they make it safely to the other side. And the mouse is so happy. He says, this is exactly like Morrison with Bertuzzi and Naslund. And Morrison is the mouse. Oh, yeah, dude. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Like, oh, yeah, it was classic. So I actually have savage, man. Like, that's like right to the heart. So my agent actually got this cartoonist to drop this awesome thing of a mouse on the back of this elephant with my jersey number on it across there. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, man. That was beauty. So you walk out and I'm kind of like fired up, right? I'm like, fuck, is this really what these guys think? Like, that's bullshit, man. So I walk out right away. It's like, Mo, it's just business, right? It's just business. Like, we love you. We love you. It's business. So anyways, yeah, that was classic.
Hilarious. Do you have to go to those things or no? Is that your choice?
No, you have to be there.
You have to be there. Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh God, just get torched.
Oh, just get shredded. Oh yeah, just like.
Hey, on a positive though, talk about the experience in Vancouver and just 3-4 years there where you guys were, you kind of had a bit of a rock star vibe to you guys as a line, right? I mean, like the arena was packed. You're selling out every night. Obviously, there's no cup there, but man, it was an exciting and like people watching, right? Like people staying up to watch the late night games because of you guys as a line.
Yeah, we got into a good situation there again. Like the team had made some moves, brought in Jovo, Matthias Oland, had Bertuzzi there, had Naslund there, and we were all relatively within a couple of years of each other.
Hey, you're all the same age.
Young core group of guys that really, if you look at it, almost had something to prove, right? We were all moved from our original team and had kind of a bit of a chip on our shoulder. And, when I first got there in 2000, Messier was still there. And, he left after that season. And the next season, my first full year was 2000. And the Sedins came in as rookies that year. And it was a good vibe around the team. But we played an exciting brand of hockey. We were never out of a game. We could be down 2-3 goals and everyone believed we still had a chance to come back and win this game. So I think that's why we were attractive.
And Mo, that was during a dead puck era too, right? Like you're talking early 2000s at a time where it's still clutch and grab hockey.
Looking at Holden and
I mean, you go back and watch that now pre 2004-05, right? It's a totally different game. But we were given, we had a system to play within, but certain guys had a little bit more leeway and our coach was Mark Crawford and with Mike Johnson and Jack McElhargy and they allowed us to play this style, right? Like, which was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. I mean, again, it didn't translate into playoff success. I think we were right there a couple times. Like, with first year we got in, we lost to Colorado, who won the cup. The next year we got up on Detroit 2-0, and they came back and won 4 straight. They won the cup. The year that I think really hurt us was the year we lost to Minnesota when we were up in the second round 3-1. And then 2004, we lost to Commie in Calgary there in game 7 in overtime. And that was kind of our window right there. And then, things completely changed in late in 2004. And then we had the lockout in 2005. And we missed the window. Yeah.
What was your best moment in the National League? What's the one thing you remember more than anything?
Oh, I think your first goal always stands out. That's vivid for me. I was fortunate. The first game I played in was in Pittsburgh. First shot on net, scored on Tom Barrasso. So that was a memorable one.
A new Hoffer. So now you got a Hoffer, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So that one stands out. A triple overtime goal against the Flames there in game 6 to send it to game 7 is a memorable one. But for me, it's more about, as you guys know, it's being in the room with the guys. It's the daily banter, right? Like I've always told people, you can't replicate that workplace, right? You go in, I mean, guys are giving it to each other. Oh, especially now. But guys are giving it to each other. They're taking it, they're giving it. The music's cranked all the time. Like it's just a great environment, right? It's just being in that, and you know, at times you're closer. You see these guys more than you see your family sometimes during the year, right? And you just build great relationships with guys and great bonds over time. And the room is probably the thing that I miss the most. Right?
You like the chirps, though. I mean, full props to you. You always were quick with a one-liner. Like that's, some people have it, some people don't, right? You kind of thrive in that. But you're a bit of a stealth bomber. You come across as prim and proper, and then
he's going up against. He has no shame going up against Lou and Berkey. So yeah, no,
there you go.
Anyone else is easy. He's going into Lou 3 times a year for a trade.
That's right. Well, that's the thing, Seaball. When you're like kind of like I don't talk much. I'm a pretty quiet guy in that, but probably don't believe me after today. But but you know, when you're kind of just kind of listen more, guys think you're an easy target at times, right? So you gotta stand up for yourself.
Well played. No, well played. Hey, listen, we're winding down here, and please, we'd love to have you come back time if you're ever interested. Before you go, you did cross paths. Like obviously, you've touched, you've rubbed shoulders, you shared rooms with a number of Hall of Famers, as you mentioned, Niedermeyer and Brodeur, and with your different stops. But you got an Ovechkin story?
Oh man, that guy. So I played, in 09, 010. In Washington, and you want to talk about rock star? That team was rock star. We won the President's Trophy that year. We had, I think, 123 points.
And that was with the Russian 5, right? I think Fedorov was still there. Too.
No, he was gone. Fedorov was gone then, but we had Semin was there. What, dude? Don't get me started on that guy.
Yeah. Oh, please do.
Oh, this guy, he has a sore wrist, right? Has 3 MRIs. Our trainers, Smitty, no play 3 weeks. Smitty's like, you've had 3 MRIs, Jizz, right? That was his nickname, Jizz. Like 3 MRIs, no play 3 weeks. So he would not play. He wouldn't play. And I remember Mike Knuble was injured as well. So he stayed behind him. Well, his legs were fine. He had a sore wrist. He wouldn't go skate. Nude was like, dude, you got to come out and skate. And your conditioning, our strength coach, no skate. He just did whatever he wanted, whenever he wanted. I've never seen anything like it. But talk about a skilled player. I don't know if I've ever seen a guy with that much skill. Like in practice and that, it was a joke. He was freaky, but his meter was like negative, you know. But Ovi is, I mean, man, he was like a big kid, right? Like that's how I describe him to people. He's a big kid. I mean, he just loved the game of hockey, just a mutant, like 230. Man, I could shoot the puck. It was a lot of fun that year with those guys. Backstrom, Mike Green, Salmon. We had the young core group of guys. These guys were living life there.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Mo. I appreciate it. Thanks for making the time. You saved my ass. Like I said, I messaged you yesterday, and you're nice enough to come on. So thank you.
All good, boys. It was fun. Now you guys are doing a good thing.
There's plenty more.
Mo, I legitimately say this. I started covering the National Hockey League around 1995, and appreciate you coming on. But I will truly say this: like one of my favorite people to deal with in the hockey world. Just as a professional, as a person, for a laugh, all of it. It's great to stay in touch over all these years, man. Thanks for doing this, and all the best. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and please let's do it again sometime. All right.
Yeah, you're too kind, Seaball, but I appreciate it, buddy. Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you very much. Have a good Christmas.
Brendan Morrison joining us here this week on the Clearing the Crease podcast.